So, as you were saying, they say it takes 10 years to build a practice. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced and how did you get through that?
I think the challenges are you have to be very savvy and not susceptible to like sales pitches from different people. You have to ask a lot of questions about what software programs you need, what equipment you need, and you have to run a really lean machine in the beginning. You have to watch every expense. The best advice I think I ever got was
Welcome back to the Deep End. Today we are joined by a surgeon, a leader, an educator, and an absolute force in aesthetic plastic surgery, Dr. Tracy Pfeifer. Dr. Pfeifer is the current president of the Aesthetic Society, past president of the New York Regional Society of Plastic Surgeons, and a nationally recognized champion for safe, ethical, high-quality aesthetic care. In this episode, we dive into the challenges and rewards of building your own practice from the ground up, carving out a unique niche in a competitive field, and stepping into leadership, not just in aesthetic surgery, but in your own life. It's an incredible conversation with somebody who has shaped the specialty in meaningful ways, and I think you're really going to love this one. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's dive in.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is an exciting episode. We've been looking forward to this. We've had listener after listener after listener ask to have you. And as Hank knows, we've interviewed a few people who you've crossed paths with, Dr. Aston, which I just talked to you about. And he mentioned you as one of his kind of, a proud moment in aesthetic surgery about how you're the next president of the Aesthetic Society. We had Jennifer Walden, and your name just comes up over and over again. So it's just so great to have you. And Hank and I are really much looking forward to this.
thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very
Yeah,
much
thank
looking
you.
forward to it.
Yeah. So let's rewind in time and go back to your childhood years. What kind of shaped you into who you are today, and what inspired you to go into medicine and even more so plastic surgery?
It's a great question. I was actually thinking about it the other day because I was speaking to the residents at NYU about plastic surgery and leadership. And I really just kind of stumbled upon the whole thing. I come from a family of very strong Irish women on my mom's side. And they were always very involved in the community. As you know, Irish people are pretty resilient because they've been through a lot, hundreds of years ago. My great grandmother was the first president of a like child protection agency
Oh,
in
wow.
New York City. And it
That's
was very
cool.
unusual at that time for a woman to do that. And my grandmother also had a professional career before she was married. And then my mom was kind of a very unusual person for her generation. She married very late and she had a career in what's the equivalent of the State Department. She lived overseas in Morocco. She's a very independent person. So I think I was always inspired, like, if you're not necessarily going to be a traditional person, like you're not going to necessarily want to grow up and get married and have kids. That was like never my thing. So, and my dad tells me that when I was about 6 years old, I announced that I was going to be a surgeon. So I have no
Wow.
idea where
Wow.
this came from because I have a great uncle who is an anesthesiologist, but I did not know him really. And, everybody in my family was kind of like, well, she's always thought about this since she was 6 years old. Maybe she just like has it in her head. But it turns out that it is what I really wanted to do. So I was just very determined at a young age that I wanted to be a surgeon and I wanted to help people.
Mhm.
That was always,
Yeah.
I wanted to help people. And I think that comes from, my family and how I grew up.
That's a little scary for me to think that whenever my daughters now, who are 3, 5, 7, and 3 months, say what they want to be, it might actually be a reality.
Yeah. When you're young, you're like, you're kind of, free and you're not subjected to what society expects of you.
You're so
It's
right.
kind of your authentic you is when you're a child, I think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I said I was gonna be Indiana Jones, I think, when I was 6.
Well, you could
Did you have that sort of support early on?
I would say, I mean, my parents always supported me and my dad was always very proud of my education because I was the first person on his side of the family to complete 4 years of college.
Wow.
So, he had gone to college, but he didn't do the whole 4 years.
Mhm.
So he was always very proud of that fact, and, I think he was concerned that I kind of had this fantasy in my head about being a surgeon and that I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily know what it meant to do that. And so I actually, after college, I got a master's degree in management. And then I went to Columbia for a year to do the postbac program there. And then I did a research year at Rockefeller. It was kind of like
Wow.
Cool.
make sure that this is what I really wanted to do. So
Hmm.
I did
Yeah.
that and was like, yeah, okay, now I'm going to medical school.
So you always kind of knew you wanted to be a surgeon, but were there any pivotal moments or experiences you remember where you decided plastic surgery is where you wanted to go within surgery?
No, that's always been I'm a very curious person. If you believe in astrology at all, I'm a Sagittarian and we're like interested in everything and we find everything fascinating and we ask a million questions all the time and there isn't anything that we don't find interesting. And in fact,
Yeah.
when I was interviewing for my residency programs, I was at Beth Israel, I think it was in Boston, and the professor looked at my list of like extracurricular activities, which was, president of this, yearbook of that, student council, and she's like, you're not going to have time to do all these things when you're a surgical resident. And I'm like, well, I think I'll still, be okay. So everything that I did in medical school, I thought was very interesting, like, even psychiatry.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
thought everything was really fascinating, but I always loved surgery because you have a problem and you can fix it and it's done and the patient is better. And I could never go into internal medicine where the patients have, chronic problems and, get better, 100% better. You're
Yeah.
controlling the disease, but you're not really curing it. That was
Mm.
always something for me. So when I did general surgery, I loved all of the surgical subspecialties.
Yeah.
And I mean, I loved everything. I loved trauma, I loved pediatric. The only thing I didn't really care for was burn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my friend was going into plastics, and I had never really considered, plastics. I really didn't have exposure to it. And she said, why don't you do a rotation in plastic surgery? So in my fourth year, that's when I first became exposed to it.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm like, oh, this is really interesting because it's creative. There's not one situation that's exactly the same as the other.
Yep.
And then very importantly, you can have a connection like that relationship with the patient, which was missing from the rest of general surgery because, okay, somebody has appendicitis, they come in, you take it out, you don't really see them very often.
Yeah.
Whereas in plastics, you would develop a relationship with them.
Yeah.
So I was drawn to it like, immediately. I said,
Mhm.
this is going to be my home.
Yeah. I feel like that's a common theme in our podcast. A lot of times the people who fall into plastic surgery are the people who liked everything and they don't want to be pigeonholed into one type of thing and they don't want to have boundaries and you can operate on the whole body. And it's also interesting that you bring up liking psychiatry because I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
times we're pseudo psychiatrists as well.
You have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really have to be. So it all is like the perfect mix.
It's
And I
funny.
also like being outside of the hospital. I like having independence and I can organize my practice the way I want to. And, I can have staff return phone calls right away. Like all of that independence and control over the patient experience, I think is really something that appeals to me.
Do you keep in touch with that friend who guided you towards plastic
Oh,
surgery?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny how life works in that way because you wonder if she came up to you and said, "Hey, think about cardiac." Like, would you have been a cardiac surgeon? You know?
Well, it's interesting because we did have a in our general surgery, she was maybe 2 years ahead of me. She did plastics, and she did a fellowship with Dr. Aston at Manhattan
Uh-huh.
Eye and Ear, and then she actually changed course and went back and did a cardiothoracic fellowship, and that's
Yeah.
what she
Oh,
practiced. Yeah.
Wow. It's so
interesting.
funny.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's even Dr. Aston was talking about how one of his early interests was cardiac, and we've heard that from a number of guests too. So I feel like the technical aspect probably is what engages
Yes.
people.
Yeah, you have to
Tell
be really precise in cardiac.
And so then what then pushed you further into the world of aesthetics?
Well, I did a breast fellowship with Dr. Hartramp,
Mhm.
who
Oh, that's
basically
wonderful.
developed the tram flap,
Yeah.
and, he was a very inspirational person. I just connected with breast surgery. I really liked it. I liked the patients. I liked the creativity of it. So that was kind of very easy for me to decide on that. Did my plastics training at NYU, and at the time, we did a lot of hand and craniofacial and a lot
Mhm.
of micro actually. And I was actually pretty good at micro, and that was before, people were doing micro fellowships and stuff. You're really tied to the hospital. At that time, they were like very long cases, 14-hour cases. And I just thought that's not going to be it for me. And I love, landscape design and interior design
Yeah,
and I really feel very strongly that if somebody feels confident and happy about the way they look, that it elevates their energy level and it really brings a
so
lot of
true.
joy to their life. So I felt like that was the best fit for my personality and how I wanted to have my practice develop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to think about New York and how competitive that market is, especially when you think about aesthetics and every corner you turn, there's a new aesthetic office. How did you kind of go about carving your own niche?
I mean, it took a lot of time. I remember, Dan Baker would tell us, it's going to take like 10 years to really build a practice.
Yeah,
And, it
that's a
was
long time.
it was slow and it took time, and I was kind of used to my whole life people telling me that, you can't do things. Like, when I was a third-year medical student and I rolled into the clinical rotations, the chief of surgery said, "I don't believe in surgery," and I'm like, "Mm, okay." So now I have to be, like, the best student, I have to get the top grades. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did all that, and then I went into the couples match, and I was told, that's you're gonna get dragged down by going into the couples match, you're not gonna match at a good place, and I matched at Cornell and, it was fantastic. Then I'm gonna apply to NYU, and people are like, "Well, you're not gonna get into NYU." Cornell and NYU have a rivalry, they're never gonna take you. So I thought somebody's gonna do it, so why can't I be one of the people that's successful?
Yeah.
And initially, I reached out to people who were in practice for a while, and I said, "Hey, if there's any cases that, you don't really wanna do anymore because you're, so busy, your practice is so full, send them my way."
But that's so
And I
great.
started doing a lot of revision breast surgery for, like, augmentation patients, and that's how it got started.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like we have Lou Bucky here. I feel like sends me some revisions because I was one of his mentees through this through my training program, and so I definitely have embraced that as well. And it's nice. It's a nice way to start your practice.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, I knew Lou because Lou was ahead. He was a fellow in plastics at Memorial.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
yeah, yeah, Lou's great.
So, as you were saying, they say it takes 10 years to build a practice. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced, and how did you get through that in the
I mean,
beginning?
starting a practice is really hard, and we don't have any business education,
I
whatsoever.
know.
I didn't have any guidance in that regard, whatsoever.
And then financially, you have to accept to be in the red for a little bit, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for several years.
which is
And,
terrifying because you're just assuming that at some point you're gonna be okay.
yeah. Yeah, if I didn't have the support of my better half, who went into cardiology, I don't know what I would have done. It would have been much more nerve-wracking than it was. But I think the challenges are, figuring out how to do budgets, how to hire the right staff, spending the money in the right places so that it makes sense for you. Like, you have to pay money to have the right staff because they're the backbone of the whole operation.
Mhm.
And if you scrimp on that, which I see a lot of people doing, it's just not going to work. And then you have to be very savvy and not susceptible to like sales pitches from different people. You have to ask a lot of questions about what software programs you need, what equipment you need, and you have to run a really lean machine in the beginning. You have to watch every expense. The best advice I think I ever got was do your own bookkeeping
Yeah.
initially. So because they said if you don't do that, your bookkeeper is going to present you with all these checks to sign, and you're going to be like, this can't be real. Like, where's
Yeah.
the money going? But when you do it yourself, you see the bills coming in and then you're paying the bills. It gives you a really good sense of what's going on from a business standpoint, even if you're not good at, reading a spreadsheet or, P&L or balance sheet. you have an idea of what's happening financially.
Yeah, it must be so exciting to develop those business skills and to watch a business grow. It's always been an interest of mine to kind of think about that aspect. So I can't imagine how rewarding something like that must be. Also terrifying, but also rewarding.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. But
Yeah,
that's one of the things that the Aesthetic Society is really focusing on because education is our primary mission, but practice support and teaching young people how to set up their own practices. And now, there are VC firms that are trying to acquire practices, looking at those contracts. All of these things are, in medicine, it was sort of forbidden to talk about money.
yeah,
It was,
Yeah.
Class A and antitrust issues. You can't talk about how much you're charging. And, everybody else does. And there's no reason why we shouldn't run successful from a financial standpoint, also businesses, because it
absolutely.
frees you up to, first of all, you could pay your staff better. Like, your single mother of two can have a nice income. You could take more time off to be with your family. You could spend time doing volunteer work overseas. Like it's nothing to be ashamed of that you're trying to run a
100%.
profitable business. And I think that doctors in general have a hard time standing up and saying that we deserve to be fairly compensated. And that's another thing that I like about private practice is that you're in control of that. And I feel like the surgeons and the physicians in general in the hospital, I think they're being undervalued and not properly compensated.
Amen.
Yeah, the hospitals get increased reimbursements every year, and the physicians get decreased reimbursements every year.
You're
Insane.
absolutely right. You're
And, we're
absolutely
the
right.
people that make the engine run. I think doctors really, we need to stand up for ourselves. You know,
That is such that part that what you just said is so true, and it's funny. I think back to my dad when he was practicing. My dad passed away when he was 82, but this was like 10 years ago. And think back to what his paycheck was like 50 years ago, or then even maybe 30 years ago, and it was pretty high. Almost equivalent to what. And so it's almost getting worse. I think about it too is that residents go through this 6-year training and then they do a fellowship. They're incredibly underpaid during that training. And then in medical school, they have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt. And even with all of that, to get into medical school, to get into plastic surgery, it's getting more and more competitive. And it's crazy if you stop and you think about it. It's like they're undervaluing you, but that being said, more and more people want to do it.
I know. And
Interesting.
the other thing that's not great about like the whole selection process is that there's this heavy emphasis on people having done and published multiple research papers.
Yes,
And I think that's really getting away from the
totally.
other very valuable skills and talents that people can bring to plastic
Mhm.
surgery. Like, I am not a person who enjoys doing research. It's not my forte, but I still contribute a lot and I take care of my patients really well. And, I'm an ethical person. And today, if I did not do research, I would not get into a plastic surgery program.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's a shame because there are a lot of people like me who are probably being eliminated, right now. We don't even know about.
Yeah. And we talk about this a lot.
you're
Even to
right.
take it a step further, there's people who are interested in research, but they just pump out as many as they can, like an arms race, and not even things that they're interested in, and just to rack up the numbers. And it's not like a passionate research as either. And it's just that's the other issue.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I mean, the whole research, Melu is, the department has to apply for grants in a topic that they know the NIH or whoever it is interested in funding. So everybody's kind of caught up in this one-dimensional situation, and you're doing research in areas that may not be of your interest or may not be pertinent to your patient population or your institution, but you know that it's something that the NIH or the powers that be is interested in, so
Exactly
you
right.
better focus on that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really I don't think it's a healthy situation for, science and medicine in general.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that, so many of our guests have just re-emphasized, even last week, how important it is to maintain technical excellence as your number one priority. Because really, that allows you to take good care of patients. And you don't necessarily have to enjoy doing research, but you can still use the research that comes out to guide your clinical practice in evidence-based ways. So I agree. I almost think that the world is going in an opposite direction, and we need people like you who value all the other important attributes because I look at some of these applications these days as I review them all the time as the associate program director. Like, there's no way I would get in. Absolutely no way. I matched into Johns Hopkins for general surgery, which was the best general surgery program at that time, probably, or one of the best. And I had one abstract on my CV, one abstract, no publication. And there's just no way. But so that I know the whole point of this podcast is to kind of divert conversation and enjoy these conversations. But one thing that I want to hear from somebody as successful as you is, what do you think differentiates such a thriving aesthetic practice? What kind of keeps it on that momentum from one that kind of struggles to gain traction? And I think that's an important point for some of the people who are starting their own businesses, starting their own practices, and want to be successful.
And I think it just has to be very patient focused. And you have to really think about the patient's experience and try to put yourself in their shoes and meet all their needs. Patients now are very smart and they have a lot of questions, and I think that they value education. So I think a good consultation with the patient goes a long way. And I think having staff that really supports them is important because people, they're basically trusting you with their body and their appearance. And, it's a pretty scary decision.
It's a very scary
So I
decision.
think if
Yeah.
you support the patient and you're a genuine person and they understand that you care about them and you have their best interests at heart, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And then I think you also have to recognize that patients look to plastic surgeons, aesthetic plastic surgeons, sort of as a overall consultant for like health, beauty,
Yeah.
wellness. It's expanding beyond surgery. So like
Yeah.
practice bioidentical hormone replacement is really popular. Or they'll ask me about the regenerative medicine that's available now.
And you
So
have to be
staying
somewhat
on top
knowledgeable.
of trends, they expect us to be up to
Yeah.
date on all the latest science, all the latest technology. I think you have to keep up appearances in your office. You can't let it, oh, it's been 15 years since we
Yes.
did anything. And I think there's a certain way that they expect plastic surgeons to present themselves, like in terms of how we dress,
Yeah.
like that.
You're so right.
I think all of those things are really, really important. I mean, I think they did a study where the most effective, or the patients saw the plastic surgeons as the most trustworthy and reputable if you wore like nice clothes, but with a white coat. And you'll a
Interesting.
lot of plastic surgeons, they'll wear scrubs or they'll wear scrubs with a white coat. And, I do this too.
Hmm.
Or they'll just wear clothes without a white coat. So I thought that was a really interesting study.
Yeah. It shows you how much the patients pay attention to these details. And just
Yeah,
like
it's
anything
weird. It's
else.
like a uniform, so it automatically gives you some authority, just like a police officer, they have a uniform, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
authority.
And then like the whole, you also are unique in a sense that you've been deeply involved in organized plastic surgery. So, and Hank and I talk about this behind the scenes, that to enjoy leadership, academic, societal involvement, you can still do that in aesthetic surgery, and there's a lot of people think that if you go into academics, that's where you get all of this. But clearly you have shown that you can be president of the New York Society of Plastic Surgeons, president of the Aesthetic Society, and so deeply involved in the future of our specialty. So what kind of motivated you to get involved in leadership? Now, what you said earlier, you said in medical school, and I was kind of picking up on all these things, that you're like chair of this, honor council of this, or whatever. Like, were you always
I've
interested in
always been
leadership?
like that.
Yeah.
I mean, ever since I could, in high school, everything. I was always president of this, student council,
Why is
editor of the
that?
yearbook. I love to be around people who have the same interests. So it's really
Yeah.
fun to work on projects. And basically, you're doing work. It's not in name only. I mean, it's a lot of work to be a board member or to
Of course.
organize a residence night, abstract competition or whatever. So
Yeah.
I got involved initially because William Rosenblatt, who was a previous president of the New York Regional Society, and I, of course, joined as a member, said, "Hey, we need somebody to resurrect our newsletter because that's one of the ways that we can communicate with our residents or our members, and we're on a limited budget. Would you restart our newsletter?" And so I did. And so I'm writing all the articles and working with my girlfriend who's laying it out, and we're mailing it out to people. And so that was one thing. And then I said, well, let me look and see, who is in ASPS that's not a member of the New York Regional. And then I sent like a personal letter and all this stuff to all these
Wow.
people and invited them to join. And, we had like 40 new members from that. So I'm like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
People notice when you're doing the work, and then they say, "Oh, hey, why don't you, think about doing leadership?" So it just kinda
You're right.
comes. For me, that's how it would happen. And the same thing with the Aesthetic Society. So Dr. Grotting was the past president, and I was speaking to him about some other issue at the Atlanta breast meeting. He said, "Oh, we have to get you involved with the society." So I'm like, "Okay, great." And then they started it's like a digital asset. We called it Radar. And he said, "Do you want to be editor and take this on and like sort of start it working with the tech team from the ground up?" So I said, "Sure, I'll do that." Because it's helping people and it's helping our educational mission. So I did that for a couple years. And then big thing that happened. Oh, and then because of that, they asked me to be a member at large. So I said, okay, I'll be a member at large. Then we undertook a rebranding project. So our website was very much focused only on the members. It was very outdated. It looked like, this stuffy old school thing. And Grant Stevens was really like a very visionary person when he was president. And he said, we have to rebrand this. We have to update it. Otherwise, we're just going to look like we're not up to speed with modern times. We're not going to appeal to the young people. And the original person who was going to take on that project couldn't do it because it became very clear early on that it was going to be a monumental undertaking with a lot
Mhm.
of time. She had to convince everybody of all different generations that we needed to modernize and update. So they said, okay, will you do it? So okay, I'll do it. And that was like a year and a half, 2-year project. And I swear during that time, I almost really did crash my practice. It was so time consuming.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
I was just going to finish up, I finished up this project. I was very happy that we did it and accomplished it for the society. And then one of the past presidents said to me, you should think about getting on the EC, which means you're eventually going to become president. So I said, well, if you think I can be of use and help to the organization, I will do it. But I've always been one of those kind of more of a behind the scenes person.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Because these
Yeah.
don't seem like the appealing kind of glittery positions.
No, there's like 2 types. Supposedly, there's 2 types of leaders according to like some of these theories. Some of the people are the ones that want to be center stage and they want
Yeah.
everybody to know who they are, and that's fine because you need those people. And then there's like the behind the scenes people, and
Yeah.
that's kind of more my personality.
Yeah, but you know what's so nice? It says a lot about you that you can function behind the scenes and not expect you weren't expecting these things to come for you, but you just put your heart into it, nearly crashed your own practice and into something that other people think as like a thankless position. But it is really nice, and I hope our listeners re-listen to that part that you don't always have to be the center of attention, and you can work hard behind the scenes and still be recognized for really hard work.
100%. It's not that people won't recognize you because
Yeah.
they will.
Well, kudos to the people who recognize you because that makes me really happy that people actually pay attention to merit and hard work.
Exactly. And that's what you need. You need people who seek out those people who are doing it for the good of the organization, the community, whatever it is. They're not
Yeah.
doing it for their own self, aggrandizement. And really, most of the people in society are very dedicated to the cause, the
Yeah.
mission of education. So we're very blessed that way.
Yeah.
So how did you feel when you finally found out I'm gonna be the next president of the Aesthetic Society? Was it, that's kind of the pinnacle. You're an plastic surgeon, and now you're gonna be the president of the society. I mean, it's almost like incredible, full circle, you know, I
Was
don't
it like a
even
mail
know.
was it like an envelope in the mail? Was
It's
it
like
an
winning
It's
email?
like
an
the House of
Oscar.
God book where the guy keeps getting the invitations to join things. Well, once you're selected for the executive committee, which
Then
starts
you
with the
know.
secretary treasurer, then it's almost like an automatic ascension, which is
Gotcha.
different from some other societies. Once you're president elect, it's definitely automatic that you're going to be president. I mean, something
Yeah.
really, significant would have to interfere with that. But we've never had anybody, drop out of the lineup like that. So,
Yeah.
but theoretically, along the way, you're reapplying each time from secretary to treasurer, treasurer to
Yeah.
vice president.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were talking about there's different kinds of leaders. There's ones that like to be in the front, some that like to lead from behind the scenes. But overall, what do you think makes a good leader, since it seems like you've been successful every step of the way of being a great leader?
I think it's like a combination of things, and it depends on the situation that you're in. Like, you can't be the same type of leader in your family that you are in the
Hmm.
like the operating room, for example.
Yeah.
Within the society, I think you have to have a vision for what you think the organization is or should be. I think you have to respect the heritage, but then you also have to think ahead, like 5, 10 years. How
Mhm.
are things
Yeah.
changing and how do we need to adapt? Because organizations move slowly, which I'm not against that. So you have to slowly evolve and incorporate things so that you're maintaining your relevancy and your members still see the value, of being a member.
Mhm.
And then I think communication is really important to build consensus so that everybody understands the vision and everybody's working together, for the strategic goals. And that's very time consuming. It's much quicker to say, oh, this is what we're doing and, kind of like force everybody to do it. But in the end, it's just like being president of the United States. If you issue an executive order, the next president can undo it. So you've got a whole team involved and excited about it and understanding their pivotal role that they're playing. And everybody understands the strategy and why we're doing it this way. Because if people don't understand it, if you don't allow people to express themselves, if you have meetings where people can't speak, then because they don't have full understanding, they could not throw their full weight of support behind an initiative. And in the worst case scenario, could actually try to undermine it.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing that you want. So, and I think a lot of acknowledging people's, participation and their ideas. It's very important to let people speak.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's critically important because there's always somebody who's going to be a very loud voice and will sound very confident, like they know everything, and people can be intimidated. And yet, if you ask every person in the room, what do they think? They all have great ideas
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they observations and insights that, you didn't think of.
Yeah.
So it's a time consuming process, but in the end, I think you have a much better organization, a stronger organization going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen more, speak less. And I love the, getting people's participation, because sometimes this is not political by any means, but sometimes I think about presidential terms and it's like 4 years on, next 4 years it's complete reversal of everything. Then the next 4 years is a complete reversal of everything. But in order to you have to engage the community, engage others, get people excited. I love all of that. I've really enjoyed just chatting about this all, and with thinking about the aesthetics meeting coming up and you as the president, and what are you most excited about, or what's kind of your number one initiative?
Well, we've had so many initiatives. My main thing as president was to continue what had been started in the past. We started as a very small organization with only 28 invited members, and now we're over 2,000 active surgeons and people total.
Wow.
So I think because of our history where it was a small group of people, the direction of the organization was very dominated by the president.
Hmm.
Because it's hard to get everybody moving in the right direction, sometimes people would come in with an initiative and kind of push it through. So I felt it was very important to identify all the strategic initiatives that have been started in the past, and then how can we continue to support them and expand them. And then very importantly, I really wanted to focus on our marketing and our communication because we want the public to recognize aesthetic society members as the go-to people for their aesthetic procedures, whether it's surgical or non-surgical.
Yes.
And so that has really been a big focus of mine. And when we did the rebrand, we worked with a creative person who continues to work with us today. And for example, we just had a facial and rhinoplasty meeting in Boca Raton. And normally we would get, well, I won't say the exact number, but using new digital marketing strategies, we doubled our attendance.
Wow.
And so that is a huge
So cool.
accomplishment. It was a shift for the organization in terms of, what we were doing for marketing. And we're going to learn a lot from that. And we're going to be able to apply that to our annual meet because we get about 30% of our members attending the meeting, but we know that there's more people that would benefit from the education. And we're really excited about having it in Boston because it's the 250th birthday of the country, which was totally unplanned. We were supposed to be in Boston, COVID, we had to cancel. So
Wow.
it's kind of a really cool thing.
That is really cool.
And our journal is the number one. We have an impact factor now of 3.9. So our aesthetic surgery journal is the number one plastic surgery journal.
Incredible.
And so there's a lot to celebrate. And
That's such a pivotal moment for the plastic and reconstructive surgery journal and the aesthetic surgery
yes, we
journal.
have a little competition with the White Journal.
But competition is good. Competition is good for everybody.
Yeah.
And Hank might be going to the aesthetic meeting this year, maybe.
I hope
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I would
And then
love
we're going to
to.
be doing some special things like we've again because of our history, it's kind of like we waited for people to come to us,
Mhm.
and now we're reaching out more to people. So we're going to be doing some special things for like people who are members that are first time attendees to the meeting and also people who are new members coming to the meeting. So we're going to be doing some special things for them. So I'm
Can't
proud of
wait.
everything that we're doing around marketing and reaching out to the young people, especially.
That's really cool. That gets me really excited about it. I wanted to ask you a question that we've asked a number of people, and a number of people have asked us, especially listeners. I'm curious to hear what your take is. If you were a plastic surgery resident these days, and you're interested in aesthetic surgery, and let's say you're a fourth year, do you think you should do a fellowship?
I do. And it's interesting that you asked that question because I mentioned earlier that I was just meeting with the NYU residents and they mentioned to me that they were not necessarily encouraged to do aesthetic fellowship.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think that depending on your program, but most of the programs, they have to cover a lot of material to prepare people for the boards.
Yeah.
And you need to you want to have good results when you're coming out right away so that you can build your practice. And I think a fellowship gives you exposure to people that you haven't learned from before, helps you hone your craft. And I think you can also learn the business side of running a practice in a fellowship. And it's a year. I mean, we have about 40 aesthetic fellowships and we fill them every year. I mean, we could use more fellowships. So
Yeah.
I think you meet people, they can become your mentor, you could do papers with them if you want to, they can maybe get you on the podium at some of the smaller meetings if that's what you're interested in. I mean, to me, there's like really no downside to it at all.
Yeah.
And I know you asked me earlier about what makes a successful practice. I think another thing for young people is to focus on like 1 or 2 or 3 procedures. Don't try to say like you're the go-to person for everything.
Mhm.
You love rhinoplasty? You're the rhinoplasty guy. You love, whatever. Body contouring? You're the body contouring lady. And then you
Mhm.
push that everywhere in all your marketing, on your website, when you're talking to your patients. And before you know it, you will be
You're
that
that
person.
person. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's funny. I had a resident just yesterday ask me if they should do an aesthetic fellowship if they're interested. And that was my response to them, mainly because everyone we've gone on the podcast that's a leader in aesthetic surgery has said just that. And you're right. I mean, I think one of the most valuable, I did the Memorial Sloan Kettering Fellowship like Lou. I think one of the most valuable aspects for me was the mentorship and the networking, but they even beyond the fellowship, like once that year is over, they're still, just like you said, inviting me to do stuff. Like I was just put on a committee today by my program director from fellowship. And so that's such a valuable year that goes beyond just observing and doing
Yeah.
more cases. It's all of the other stuff.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And this is such an important thing for me to kind of talk about. I wanted to hear from you because I have 4 daughters and I have 3 sisters. And you serve as such an inspiration to so many of my mentees that are interested in aesthetic surgery and plastic surgery, particularly the women in the field. And I'd say kind of what has allowed you to overcome the challenges, like when you've had the people in the past say, you can't do this. Is it things like that that have made you want to do it even further and be even stronger? And then what advice would you give women residents and fellows who aspire to build a successful aesthetic practices or take on leadership roles?
Well, I think that you're the leader of your own life. Like, because I've been thinking about this like the past couple of years. I think you're the leader of your own life. So if you allow people to limit or define what you're doing, then they're the leader of your life. And if you're conforming to some kind of societal standard or whatever it is, you're not in charge of your life. It's kind of like when people talk about don't make decisions based on fear. It's kind of like the same thing. And when I think about, people who have inspired me, I don't know if people remember, but Dr. Elizabeth Morgan wrote a book called The Making of a Woman Surgeon. And she was like a young protege. I think she went to college when she was 16. And she ended up going into plastic surgery at a time when there were not a lot of women, plus she was young. So it was very difficult for her, but she did it and she didn't let anybody, define her. Later in life, she married and she had a daughter, and she was concerned that the husband, the father, was abusing the daughter.
Mm.
It was a court battle and he won custody, and she was so concerned that this was going on that she basically put her daughter into hiding with her parents, and she wouldn't reveal her whereabouts, and she went to jail for like over 2 years,
Oh my gosh.
her daughter. So that was always a big inspiration to me that, follow your own principles and what you think is right and don't let anybody define you. And I'm not a person that I would say is like a feminist. Sometimes when I talk to other women who I think that they think they're feminists, and I guess they are feminists, but they're like unhappy with the environment that they're in, but you can't change the environment. So what you can do is be, outspoken, advance yourself, speak your truth, and not everybody's going to like it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. You could still succeed. They're not necessarily going to give you permission. And it's not because, men or other groups are against us. It's just that that's the environment that has developed from a societal standpoint over, hundreds of years. And there are lots of men who are very supportive of women in plastic surgeries. Find those people because
Yeah.
they will help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just think like don't worry about what other people are saying about you or think about you because you can't make everybody happy. And especially in any leadership, you're not going to make everybody happy, which includes the leadership of your own life. Like,
Yeah.
not everybody's going to be happy with the decisions that you make for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's everything. So, for women who are going into aesthetic plastic surgery, I think we're in a very good position because women are drawn to us. I mean, I know people don't like us to say that, but women
Yeah.
are drawn to us, especially for certain types of procedures. And I think we have a lot of high emotional intelligence, usually, which helps us really connect with our patients. Like we're very intuitive, and men can have those qualities also. But I do think that women have a collaborative spirit and kind of nature that's been inbred for, hundreds and hundreds of years. That also makes us very successful team builders, within our own practices. So I encourage everybody to pursue your dreams and don't let anybody put any limits on you. There's so many stories of people who, if you looked at the objectively, like kind of from the outside, you would say, oh, that person's never gonna, you know,
Yeah.
or do anything that they want to do. And they overcome the odds. And
Yeah.
there's more women in medical school now.
Yeah.
There's more women in surgery. So
Definitely.
I think the future
Yeah.
is bright for the profession. And I think that men and women are more collaborative than ever. And I think it's a very good
It
situation
is.
we're in.
It
Yeah,
really is.
that's very well said, beautiful. One other thing I wanted to ask, and thank you again for your time. This has been incredible. I think everyone is gonna find so much value in this podcast. They've been asking to get you on, and if I'm able to make it to the aesthetic meeting this year, which I'm hoping to, it would be great to reconnect.
Yeah.
But so overall, you've accomplished so much. What do you think has been the most rewarding in your journey so far, both from on a professional level and a personal level?
And professionally, I would say building my dream practice is
Yeah,
probably the most significant thing that I've done. And the patients that they write you thank you letters and they tell you, what a difference and how happy they are. Those are very important things that you can't
Absolutely.
replicate. So a girl coming from, public school in New Jersey and having a practice in Manhattan, that was like a
Public school.
big thing for me. In terms of like life overall, I think I'm happy that for the most part I've been able to protect my principles and try to be, live an honest life and do things for the right reasons. And
yeah,
sometimes it's not easy for anybody, but I think I'm most proud of trying to do the right thing, as often as I have the power and the will to do it.
Yeah. So and if you it's hard to sometimes live like this, but if you could go back and maybe thinking back to your younger self, is there any advice that you would give her and perhaps, in order to avoid something or change your path back then, is there any advice you'd give your younger self?
Yeah, I would tell my younger self to be more sensitive to other people's feelings and their perspective because I have a very like strong view about like, this is the right path. And I think you have to recognize that I think it's like 98% of the people, but maybe it's a little bit less. I think that some people could see like very clearly what the future is, and most people it takes a little bit of time for them to adjust to that. And I think it's about like 5 years, maybe a little longer. So I think you have to be patient with people. So I would tell my younger self to be more patient and understand that people eventually will see things, but it just takes some time. I mean, everybody's just on their own schedule, so you can't like force people to, kind of think the way you think or see things the way you think.
yeah,
To have a little more patience.
Yeah. I want to,
yeah,
before Hank does his last two questions, I want to ask one more question that I think is important. And this is partly to admit that I just don't know as much because I'm mainly reconstructive. I do some cosmetic, but I'm mainly reconstructive. So if I'm an aesthetic surgeon now in practice, I want to be successful, I want to network. What are the conferences that I go to? Like the Aesthetic Society for sure. It sounds like there's a Atlanta breast
Yeah, that's a
meeting.
great one too.
There's a London breast meeting. I mean, there's a rhinoplasty society. Are there any other societies that you would say, if you really want to be successful in aesthetic, you want to network, that you got to hit these societies?
I mean, I would join your state or local society, whether, you want to do reconstructive or aesthetic, because you'll meet a lot of plastic surgeons at these meetings. Like the Southeastern has a great vibe.
Hmm.
There's a lot of aesthetic plastic surgeons in that organization. The California Society, I mean, all of the local regional societies are, think,
yeah,
places to be. And then I do think the Atlanta breast meeting is like an outstanding
Hmm.
meeting, and the meet covers a lot of stuff. I mean, there's so much going on, you can't figure out which one
Yeah.
you want to go to.
And it was the last year of the
Finding
Baker
a
Gordon.
mentor too, finding a
Yeah.
person that you can connect with, because there's fantastic overseas meetings where you might not, you may not be presenting there, but you're going to learn a lot.
yeah,
And I think that was one of the things that I loved about the Atlanta breast meeting was I was exposed to all these international speakers that I wasn't seeing at the other US meetings. And
yeah,
these people are really smart and they have great ideas. So I think having a mentor is really helpful, really helpful. And we have a mentorship program for medical students that are in medical schools that don't have plastic surgery divisions. So we pair
yeah.
them up with people so that they could do research projects and enhance their
That's great.
accepted into plastics. But the same thing goes when you talk to people, they all had mentors. Maybe Dr. Aston considers Dr. Reese, one of his mentors, or Mike Lee doing facial plastics in Dallas considers Fritz Barton one of his
Of
mentors.
course.
Everybody
Yeah.
had somebody that they really looked up to and made an impact. And don't be afraid to call people and reach out.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So I have final two questions that we ask everyone. They're fun questions. So What music do you like to listen to in the OR?
Or do you listen to any music?
Yeah.
Well, the anesthesiologist is in control of the music. I honestly don't really hear it, but every once in a while, like
Good
if
for
we're
them.
closing or something, I like 70s like dance and disco music,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and Champagne King and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So if we need a little
Fun.
energy boost, I'll say, put something like that on. They all roll their eyes, but I think it's fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, anesthesia controls the music.
Nice. And then, what's your favorite surgical instrument?
Well, I love my Dr. Kim headlight.
No,
Do you know the Dr. Kim headlight?
No.
I don't.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love the Dr. Kim. So I think Dr. Kim is from Korea, which, by the way, I love South Korea. We went there this year. It's this very comfortable headlight, and it's 2 lights, one on
Yeah,
top of the
oh,
other. And
yes.
wherever you're looking, the light is in the right place, and it doesn't give you a headache. And you can either snap in, magnifiers for vision, or you could put in a video recorder. And so you can really record videos from the surgeon's eagle-eye
Perspective.
view.
Wow.
It's amazing. Biolumex has one that's very similar, but I'm really, I just love my Dr. Kim headlight.
I've
I gotta
only
look into that. That's the
I've
first
seen-
time.
Yeah, it's
Hank, have you
seen
fantastic.
pictures of
And the
them?
like the video recording part of it is so cool.
Yeah. I've
Wow.
seen pictures and I'm like, why do you need 2 headlights right on top of each other? Like, what's the purpose? I don't get it.
It
That
just
makes sense.
it works. Like you never have to have somebody come over and like adjust your light
That's wild.
ever.
So I can
Yeah.
stop doing that for you, Saeed. Every 5
Yeah,
minutes, come
exactly.
and
No,
adjust
you
your
have to
light.
still do it.
Yeah,
You
don't
have
let
to
them
still
make
do
you
it.
do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I think selfishly, I could talk honestly and I'm not just saying that, I could talk for hours. And I think it's so great just to get to know people even better, because I feel like the societies and conferences sometimes are just broken records and we don't get to dive into what's important and what's meaningful. And so I can't thank you enough. We probably could have talked for much longer, but I appreciate you taking the time out. And I think it'll be a very timely release of this podcast, particularly with you being the president of the society. Thanks again.
Well, thank you. And I do want to say one more thing before we wrap up, which
Yes.
is that as I go around to all the regional meetings, and I listen to the reconstructive surgeons, my toughest case, my best save, I am blown away by what the reconstructive surgeons
Yeah.
are doing. I mean, it is incredible.
Yeah.
And it's really heartwarming to see what everybody's doing to really impact patients' lives. And it's just incredible stuff that, we were not doing that 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So we love our
Wow.
reconstructive brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
No, you're so right. And I think that's what's so nice about being able to reunite people. Like you were just talking about all the different meetings that are important for aesthetic surgeons to go to, which I don't go to, but it's nice to be able to talk to them. And likewise, I love to be able to talk to people in the aesthetic world. And I love our specialty is so cool to be able to cross the boundaries of hand and craniofacial and aesthetics and reconstructive and have all of our creative minds all together.
Yeah.
It truly is the best specialty. It's so wonderful.
100%.
Thank you for listening to The DIEP End, a plastic surgery podcast. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and leave a rating on Apple Music or Spotify. Video from the podcast is available on Instagram and YouTube at The DIEP End Podcast. Join us again soon for more conversations with luminaries and experts in the world of surgery.